Good night, everyone. We are beginning with Genesis chapter 31 from the English Standard Version. Now, Jacob heard that the sons of Laban were saying, Jacob has taken all that was our father's, and from what our fathers he has gained all his wealth. And Jacob saw that Laban did not regard him with favor as before. Then the Lord said to Jacob, Return to the land of your fathers and your kindred, and I will be with you. So Jacob sent and called Rachel and Leah into the field where his flock was, and said to them, I see that your father does not regard me with favor as he did before. But the God of my father has been with me. You know that I have served your father with all my strength. Yet your father has cheated me and changed my wages 10 times. But God did not permit him to harm me. If he said, The spotted shall be your wages, then all the flock bore spotted. And if he said, The striped shall be your wages, then all the flock bore striped. Thus God has taken away the livestock of your father and given them to me. In the breeding season of the flock, I lifted up my eyes and saw in a dream that the goats mated with the that the goats that mated with the flock were striped, spotted, and mottled. Then the angel of God said to me in the dream, Jacob. And I said, Here I am. And he said, Lift up your eyes and see. All the goats that mate with the flock are striped, spotted, and mottled. For I have seen all that Laban is doing to you. I am the God of Bethel, where you anointed a pillar and made a vow to me. Now arise, go out from this land, and return to the land of your kindred. Then Rachel and Leah answered and said to him, Is there any portion or inheritance left to us in our father's house? Are we not regarded by him as foreigners? For he has sold us and has indeed devoured our money. All the wealth that God has taken away from our father belongs to us and to our children. Now then, whatever God has said to you, do. So Jacob arose and set his sons and his wives on camel. He drove away all his livestock, all his property that he had gained, the livestock in his possession that he had acquired in Padan Aram, to go to the land of Canaan to his father Isaac. Laban had gone to shear his sheep, and Rachel stole her father's household gods. And Jacob tricked Laban the Aramean by not telling him that he intended to. He fled with all that he had and arose and crossed the Euphrates and set his face towards the hill country of Gilead. When it was told Laban on the third day that Jacob had fled, he took his kinsman with him and pursued him for 7 days and followed close after him into the hill country of Gilead. But God came to Laban the Aramean in a dream by night and said to him, Be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And Laban overtook Jacob. Now Jacob had pitched his tent in the hill country, and Laban with his kinsmen pitched tents in the hill country of Gilead. And Laban said to Jacob, what have you done that you have tricked me and driven away my daughters like captives of the sword? Why did you flee secretly and trick me, and did not tell me, so that I might have sent you away with mirth and songs, with tambourine and lyre? And why did you not permit me to kiss my sons and my daughters farewell? Now you have done foolishly. It is in my power to do you harm. But the God of your father spoke to me last night, saying, be careful not to say anything to Jacob, either good or bad. And now you have gone away because you longed greatly for your father's house. But why did you steal my gods? Jacob answered and said to Laban, because I was afraid, for I thought that you would take your daughters from me by force. Anyone with whom you find your gods shall not live. In the presence of our kinsmen, point out what I have that is yours, and take it. Now Jacob did not know that Rachel had stolen them. So Laban went into Jacob's tent, and into Leah's tent, and into the tent of the two female servants, but he did not find them. And he went out of Leah's tent and entered Rachel's. Now Rachel had taken the household gods and put them in the camel's saddle and sat on them. Laban felt all about the tent, but did not find them. And she said to her father, let not my lord be angry that I cannot rise before you, for the way of women is upon me. So he searched, but did not find the household gods. Then Jacob became angry and berated Laban. Jacob said to Laban, what is my offense? What is my sin that you have hotly pursued me? For you have felt through all my goods. What have you found of all your household goods? Set it here before my kinsmen and your kinsmen, that they may decide between us two. These 20 years I have been with you. Your ewes and your female goats have not miscarried, and I have not eaten the rams of your flocks. What was torn by wild beasts I did not bring to you. I bore the loss of it myself. From my hand you required it, whether stolen by day or stolen by night. There I was. By day the heat consumed me, and cold by night, and my sleep fled from my eyes. These 20 years I have been in your house. I served you for 14 years for your two daughters, and 6 years for your flock, and you have changed my wages 10 times. If the God of my father, the God of Abraham, and the fear of Isaac had not been on my side, surely now you would have sent me away empty handed. God saw my affliction and the labor of my hands, and rebuked you last night. Then Laban answered and said to Jacob, the daughters are my daughters, and the children are my children. The flocks are my flocks, and all that you see is mine. But what can I do this day? for these my daughters, or for their children, whom they have borne. Come now, let us make a covenant, you and I, and let it be a witness between you and me. So Jacob took a stone and set it up as a pillar. And Jacob said to his kinsmen, gather stones. And they took stones and made a heap, and they ate there by the heap. Laban called it Jegar Sahadutha, but Jacob called it Gilead. Laban said, this heap is a witness between you and me. Therefore he named it Gilead, and Mizpah. For he said, the Lord watch between you and me when we are out of one another's sight. If you oppress my daughters, or if you take wives besides my daughters, although no one is with us, see, God is witness between you and me. Then Laban said to Jacob, see this heap and the pillar which I have set between you and me. This heap is a witness, and the pillar is a witness, that I will not pass over this heap to you, and you will not pass over this heap and this pillar to me to do harm. The God of Abraham and the God of Nahor, the God of their father, judge between us. So Jacob swore by the fear of his father Isaac, and Jacob offered a sacrifice in the hill country and called his kinsmen to eat bread. They ate bread and spent the night in the hill country. Early in the morning, Laban arose and kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then Laban departed and returned home. Genesis chapter 32. Jacob went on his way, and the angels of God met him. And when Jacob saw them, he said, this is God's camp. So he called the name of that place Mahanaim. And Jacob sent messengers before him to Esau his brother in the land of Seir, the country of Edom, instructing them, thus you shall say to my lord Esau, thus says your servant Jacob, I have sojourned with Laban and stayed until now. I have oxen, donkeys, flocks, male servants, female servants, and I have sent to tell my lord in order that I may find favor in your sight. And the messengers returned to Jacob, saying, we came to your brother Esau, and he is coming to meet you. And there are 400 men with him. Then Jacob was greatly afraid and distressed. He divided the people who were with him, the flocks and herds and camels, into two camps, thinking, if Esau comes to one camp and attacks it, then the camp that is left will escape. And Jacob said, O God of my father Abraham, and God of my father Isaac, O Lord, who said to me, return to your country and to your kindred, that I may do you good. I am not worthy of the least of all the deeds of steadfast love and all the faithfulness that you have shown to your servant. For with only my staff I crossed this Jordan, and now I have become two camps. Please deliver me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him, that he may come and attack me, the mothers with the children. But you said, I will surely do you good and make your offspring as the sand of the sea, which cannot be numbered for multitude. So he stayed there that night, and from what he had with him, he took a present for his brother Esau, 200 female goats and 20 male goats, 200 ewes and 20 rams, 30 milking camels and their calves, 40 cows and 10 bulls, 20 female donkeys and 10 male donkeys. These he handed over to his servants, every drove by itself, and said to his servants, Pass on ahead of me and put a space between drove and drove. He instructed the first, When Esau my brother meets you and asks you, To whom do you belong? Where are you going? And whose are these ahead of you? Then you shall say, They belong to your servant Jacob. They are a present sent to my lord Esau. And moreover, he is behind us. He likewise instructed the second and the third and all who followed the droves. You shall say the same thing to Esau when you find him. And you shall say, Moreover, your servant Jacob is behind us. For he thought, I may appease him with the present that goes ahead of me, and afterwards I shall see his face. Perhaps he will accept me. So the present passed on ahead of him, and he stayed that night in the camp. The same night he arose and took his 2 wives, his 2 female servants, and his 11 children, and crossed the ford of the Jabbok. He took them and sent them across the stream and everything else that he had. And Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the breaking of the day. When the man saw that he did not prevail against Jacob, he touched his hip socket, and Jacob's hip was put out of joint as he wrestled with him. Then he said, Let me go, for the day has broken. But Jacob said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, What is your name? And he said, Jacob. Then he said, Your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have striven with God and with men, and have prevailed. Then Jacob asked him, Please tell me your name. But he said, Why is it that you ask my name? And there he blessed him. So Jacob called the name of the place Peniel, saying, For I have seen God face to face, and yet my life has been delivered. The sun rose upon him, and he passed Peniel, limping because of his hip. Therefore, to this day, the people of Israel do not eat the sinew of the thigh that is on the hip socket, because he touched the socket of Jacob's hip on the sinew of the thigh. Chapter 33. And Jacob lifted up his eyes and looked, and behold, Esau was coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel, and the two female servants. And he put the servants with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on before them, and bowing himself to the ground 7 times, until he came near to his brother. But Esau ran to meet him, and embraced him, and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. And when Esau lifted up his eyes and saw the women and children, he said, Who are these with you? Jacob said, The children whom God has graciously given your servant. Then the servants drew near, they and their children, and they bowed. Leah likewise, and her children, and drew near and bowed down. And last, Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, What do you mean by all this company that I met? Jacob answered, To find favor in the sight of my Lord. But Esau said, I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself. Jacob said, No, please. If I have found favor in your sight, then accept my present from my hand, for I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of God, and you have accepted me. Please accept my blessings that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have enough. Then thus he urged him, and he took it. Then Esau said, Let us journey on our way, and I will go ahead of you. But Jacob said to him, My Lord knows that the children are frail, and that the nursing flocks and herds are a care to me. If they are driven hard for one day, all the flocks will die. Let my Lord pass on ahead of his servant. I will lead on slowly at the pace of the livestock that are ahead of me, and at the pace of the children, until I come to my Lord in Seir. So Esau said, Let me leave you with some of the people who are with me. But he said, What need is there? Let me find favor in the sight of my Lord. So Esau returned that day on his way to Seir. But Jacob journeyed to Succoth, and built himself a house, and made booths for his livestock. Therefore, the name of the place is called Succoth. And Jacob came safely to the city of Shechem, which is in the land of Canaan, on his way to Padan Aram, and he camped before the city. And the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, and from the sons of Hamor, Shechem's father, he bought for 100 pieces of money the piece of land on which he had pitched his tent. There he erected an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. Let's start with the questions. Question 1. Why did Jacob decide to return to Canaan?
Jacob learned that Laban's sons were grumbling about him, saying that he had robbed their father of everything. And Jacob began to notice a change in Laban's attitude toward him. The Lord also told Jacob to return to the land of his father and grandfather, and that he would be with him.
How did he justify his decision to Rachel and Leah? He cited Laban's attitude and the fact that his wages were changed 10 times, even though he was blessed by God still. Also, that God had instructed him to go. And I like that he consulted with his wives for that instead of just telling them, okay, we go in. Next question. How did they reply?
Rachel and Leah responded that it was okay with them because they would not inherit any of their father's wealth because he had reduced their rights to that of foreign women. After he had sold them, he wasted the money that Jacob had paid, and all the wealth God has given to Jacob from their father legally belongs to them and their children. So they said to him, "Go ahead and do as God has told you."
And how did Jacob leave Padan Aram, and what was his destination? He put his wives and children on camels. They went secretly, crossing the Euphrates, heading for Gilead. And their destination was Canaan, where Isaac lived. And, question 5. What did Rachel steal?
Rachel stole her father's household idols and took them with her.
And you have any? Why do you think she stole the items? Because I was reading it, like it had a lot of, they had like a little list of possibilities.
Well, I didn't really think about it, but it could be that she was attached to them, or also like maybe she wanted to get back at her father for treating Jacob so badly, and she knew that it would be something that he would miss.
I was reading that the household idols was like a claim to the estate.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like a legal claim to the estate. I was reading that in the Endurance Wood, but that was just one possibility. We don't actually know why, because the scripture never told us why. Number 6. What did Laban do when he learned that Jacob had fled? He gathered his relatives and pursued them and met them in Gilead. Or you could, I think you could read your own questions.
Okay. Number 7. What did God tell Laban? God warned Laban and told him to leave Jacob alone.
Number 8. How did Laban speak to Jacob? I answered by saying what he said to Jacob. He asked him why he left in secret, taking his daughters away like captives. At first, he claimed that he would have sent them away with feasting and music. And then immediately after, he threatened them, saying that he could do them harm. Next, he told them that he was warned by God not to interfere. And finally, he asked why they stole his gods.
Number 9. How did Jacob answer Laban? Why? Jacob told Laban he rushed away because he was afraid. He said he thought Laban would take his daughters away by force. He said to Laban, "But as for your gods, see if you can find them and let the person who has taken them die. And if you find anything else that belongs to you, identify it before our relatives, and I will give it back."
Why did Laban not find the stolen objects? Laban didn't find the objects because Rachel had them in her camel's saddle. She sat on them and lied about having her period to excuse not standing. I always had a big problem. Like stealing and then lying. Just like Jacob when he was in his father's house.
Right. Number 11.
Yeah.
How did Jacob then speak to Laban? Why? Jacob became very angry and he challenged Laban. He demanded to know what crime he had committed and what wrong he had done to make Laban chase after him like a criminal and rummage through all his belongings. He asked Laban to show anything that he had found that was stolen. He spoke of all the work he did for Laban and all the times Laban tried. Sorry, this not right. So then I read. He spoke of all the work he did for Laban and all the times Laban tried to cheat him of wages. And if not for God himself, Laban would have sent him away empty-handed. He did this because he was angry and frustrated.
And how did Laban reply and what did he propose? Laban then made the dubious claim that everything Jacob had was his, but for the sake of his daughters and the grandchildren, he proposed to make a covenant.
How did Jacob and Laban commemorate the covenant? Jacob took a stone and set it as a monument. Then he told his family members, "Gather some stones." So they gathered stones and piled them in a heap. Then Jacob and Laban sat down beside the pile of stones to eat a covenant meal. To commemorate the event, Laban called the place Jegar Sahadutha, which means witness pile in Aramaic, and Jacob called it Galid, which means witness pile in Hebrew.
What did Jacob do to seal the covenant? Jacob sealed the covenant by offering a sacrifice to God on the mountain and by having a covenant meal with his brethren and spending the night on the mountain.
How did Laban depart? Laban got up early the next morning and he kissed his grandchildren and his daughters and blessed them. Then he left and returned home.
Okay, thought questions. Who protected Jacob?
God.
I just had I had one good answer for that one. God. Okay. Next, what significance was attached to the pillar and who was called to witness?
The pillar was a witness of their vows and a mark of the boundary between them. God is a witness, and also the stones themselves were a witness.
Yeah. So the pile was a boundary between Jacob and Laban. Neither could cross it to harm the other. So God was called to witness. Laban himself said, "May the Lord keep watch between us and make sure that we keep his covenant when we are absent from one another." And the pillar itself was a witness. You could start with number 1.
Number 1. Where did Jacob send messengers? With what message? Jacob sent messengers to his brother Esau in the region of Seir in the land of Edom. The message was, "Humble greetings from your servant Jacob. Until now I have been living with Uncle Laban, and now I own cattle, donkeys, flocks of sheep and goats, and many servants, both men and women. I have sent these messengers to inform my lord of my coming, hoping that you will be friendly to me."
Next. What message did they bring in return, and how did Jacob react and why? The message that Jacob received was that Esau was coming to meet him with an army of 400 men. Jacob was afraid and distressed. He divided his party into 2 camps, thinking if one was attacked, the other would escape.
Three. What happened to Jacob as the result of the wrestling match? What custom did the Israelites keep as the result? He was limping, and the custom is the people of Israel do not eat the tendon near the hip socket because of what happened that night when the man strained the tendon of Jacob's hip.
And 4 questions. Why did angels appear to Jacob? What did you have for that? I think that one is the first set of angels, not the man that was wrestling with him.
The angels appeared to Jacob to give him comfort and encouragement.
So I have the camp of angels were always there to protect and guide Jacob and his family, but God now allowed Jacob to see them. Firstly, because he had separated officially from Laban, who was sinful and worldly, and also to encourage him about facing Esau. Next one, how did Jacob prepare to meet the expected crisis with Esau?
He divided his household so if one was attacked, the other group could escape, and he prayed to God for protection. He also prepared gifts for his brother.
Right, so I don't have anything different. 3, explain the wrestling match in which Jacob participated and what was its significance.
After Jacob sent his wives and sons across the Jabbok River with his possessions, he was alone in the camp. A man came and wrestled with him until dawn began to break. When the man saw he would not win the wrestling match, he touched Jacob's hip and wrenched it out of its socket. The significance is so that he wouldn't give up when faced with struggle.
Okay. I have, after sending his family across the ford of Jabbok, Jacob remained behind and met God in human form. This man wrestled with him. Jacob realized that the man had supernatural strength. and the power to bless. God wanted to bless Jacob, but he also wanted Jacob to prove how much he wanted God's blessing and also to realize how much he needed God to bless him personally. The physical wrestling was a symbol of the spiritual struggle many servants of God undergo until we fully surrender to God. The wound on Jacob's hip was probably to remind him that God was sovereign and that God's strength is made perfect in our weakness. Next, to what was Jacob's name changed? And why?
Paul?
Yes, no,
Jacob refused to let the man go until he had blessed him. And the man said, "Your name will no longer be Jacob. From now on, you will be called Israel, because you have fought with God and with men and won."
Jacob means supplanter and Israel means he who struggles with God. So Jacob was no longer considered a supplanter, but someone who stood in God's favor and who was fully surrendered to God and who trusted in him. And question 5, what did Jacob name the place and why?
Peniel, which means face of God, because he said he had seen the face of God and his life had been spared.
So, and I also commented, he did not see the literal face of God, but God in the form of a man, because if he saw the literal face of God, he would have to die. No one has ever seen the face of God. And okay, next. Jacob meets Esau. Look at that, Tammy.
Okay. How did Jacob arrange his family? Why? Jacob divided the children among Leah, Rachel, and his two servant wives. He put the servant wives and their children at the front, Leah and her children next, and Rachel and Joseph last. Then Jacob went ahead, because if they were attacked, his favorite wife and child would be at the back and have a higher chance of escaping.
Yeah, that was cool. That was real cool. It's like
He put them in order of his priority.
okay, something went wrong with the internet.
I don't know, that's all I hear.
Okay. We have to go through like it's a lot. Which right. We had done question 1, right?
Yeah.
Well, so I could start with question 2. Oh, I think we cut off as I had stopped hearing you some when you were doing 1. I was saying that was kind of cool.
Yeah, well, I had finished reading my answer, but what I said after was he put them in order of his priority.
Yeah, perceived importance.
Mhm.
That was real cool. Like protect Rachel at all costs. Ah, all right. Like it's like he kind of used them like they were like human shields. Like you would think, okay, put the children in the back. Oh no, put Rachel and Joseph in the back. All right. Describe the meeting between Jacob and Esau. Jacob bowed before his brother 7 times. Esau ran to meet him and embraced him, fell on his neck, kissed him, and they wept. Esau saw the children and the woman and children, who then bowed before him in the order that Jacob had placed them. Esau asked about the flocks and herds he saw on his way, and Jacob said they were a gift. After initially refusing, um, Esau accepted the gift as Jacob insisted on it. Esau wanted to continue the journey to Seir, but Jacob wanted to move at a slower pace because of the children and animals he had with him. Esau offered to leave his men behind, but Jacob politely refused.
Number 3. Where did Esau then go? Esau went back to Seir.
And where did Jacob then go? Jacob went to Succoth, where he built a house for himself and shelters for his livestock.
Number 2. How did he obtain land in Shechem? He bought a plot of land from the family of Hamor, the father of Shechem, for 100 pieces of silver.
And what did Jacob call the place? He built an altar and called it El Elohe Israel. That means God, the God of Israel. So all the time when for the 20 years, even when God was speaking to him, he always referred to God as the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac. He would say the God of my grandfather and my father, but he never referred to God as his God. So only now he actually referred to God as his God personally. And the cross reference they gave was that Jacob had made the vow when he had the dream with the ladders. He had made the vow and said that if God be with me and will keep me in this way that I go, and will give me bread to eat and clothing to wear, so that I come again to my father's house in peace, then the Lord shall be my God. So now that he was in the land of his father, at peace with his brother, he finally, after the 20 years, let the Lord be his God. All right. Anything y'all questions you'll had to ask or comments you'll had to make about anything in the last 3 chapters?
Yes, it had something, but right now I'm trying to find it because I didn't write it down separately. I normally highlight it, but there's no highlight. Is there anything you wanted to
Um,
discuss?
I find it was like a real long lesson. Not really to discuss. I just find it was very, very long. Anyway, I guess that's it then. Anything
Yeah, I
you want
can
to
do it.
talk about us? Any comments?
No. Sorry, Anyway, you're still on tape.
All right. Well, let me just close off and then let me stop the recording.